All right, welcome to this week's Points and Miles report here on Traveling on Everyday Spend. Apologize for being a couple minutes late, just trying to get things finished up. Got a few things that we need to talk about today to make sure that we're all on the same page with what's going on in this Points and Miles world. So don't want to waste any of your time. Let's go ahead and just get started. Now, as we're looking at the credit card offers that are available, not a whole lot has changed so far. We still have the Hilton cards once again through January. We still have the One Key cards, and once again, as a reminder for those that don't know what One Key is, that is essentially the currency for Vrbo, Hotels.com, and Expedia.com. So if you're a user of those portals, this is something that you would at least want to explore. But that is what One Key stands for. The Bank of America credit cards are still, the main ones are the Alaska credit cards, which they've made some variations on the points that are available. It's not as high as when they just switched over to Atmos, but still can be some very valuable ones. I've always talked about the Summit Visa card, which is their flagship version, but those are ones to end up looking at. Now, as far as Capital One, we still do have those no annual fee cards of Venture One, Quicksilver, and the Saver Rewards card with the $200 cash back for $500 in spend in the first 3 months. And you're going to get that $100 travel credit to specifically use in the travel portal. Two of the other ones that I did not list are for the new ones for the Venture X and for the Venture X Business. The Venture X credit card now is at 100,000 points, but you do have to spend $10,000 in the first 6 months to qualify for that. Excellent card, not the easiest to get. I can speak from that as a person that is just an authorized user on my wife's credit card, so I do not have that card personally. The other card is the Venture X Business card, which has a crazy bonus amount of possibly 400,000 points. Now, of course, that comes in two different batches, which is, I'm sure you're not surprised by when it comes to this. It would end up being 200,000 miles when you spend $30,000 in the first 3 months. And then you'll get an additional 200,000 miles if you spend a total of $150,000 in the first 6 months. That is crazy. I would think that if your business does that kind of level of spending, that you would probably want to consider spreading that around a little bit, where you can still probably reach that 200,000 point mark in currencies that are just as valuable. But want to make sure that you're aware of them just in case if you do have that kind of spend. Then we end up looking at Chase. Not too much has changed from them, but there is one thing to note. We still have the Chase Sapphire bonuses, which is not surprising. As we've talked about before, they just are not doing as well on the Sapphire Reserve and the Sapphire Reserve Business. They have basically put themselves in territory to compete specifically with the Amex Platinum and Platinum Business, and they're revamping for the Platinum, even though it's an outrageous amount of money for the annual fee, has still made them not as competitive for people. And so they're going to continue to probably keep this out there for a bit longer. The ones that we do need to look at is Amazon. If you are an Amazon user, whether it is Prime or not Prime, they have elevated offers on the Amazon cards right now. The Amazon regular card is at $60 gift card. As soon as you're approved, you will get that gift card. The Amazon Prime has doubled itself to $250, which is really nice, with no annual fee as long as you have an Amazon Prime membership, and you would get that as a gift card as soon as you are approved. No spending requirements on those, so just free money. Then we have the Southwest Airline credit cards, which all have the same exact bonus, 85,000 points after you spend $3,000 in the first 3 months. So that applies to the $99, $149, and $229 card. This is an excellent opportunity if you are really serious about giving a Southwest credit card a try to even slip in at the lowest dollar amount if you are that interested in it and not feeling like you have to go high, at least initially. Chase, we still also have the World of Hyatt credit card with its two-part bonus. Now, this one is ending shortly in a couple of days. This is 30,000 points for $3,000 in purchases in the first 3 months, and then you can get up to an additional 30,000 points in the first 6 months. Now, that's based upon you spending in the 1X category, which they'll double to 2X, up to $15,000, and that's where the $30,000 number comes from. You'll also get 2-tier qualifying nights for each night from all the way through January 31st of next year, up to 15 nights. So that'll get you up to 30 tier qualifying nights for 15 nights. That's a nice touch, but I still do consider this really only a 30,000 point welcome bonus, because you're not just being given a bonus for a bit of spend. You really have to spend in a certain way to get this. So, but it's still a nice deal, but we've definitely seen better with World of Hyatt. City, we still have the Strata Elite, the Strata, and the Advantage Globe, which is the mid-tier credit card for American Airlines, which would basically kind of compete with the Platinum for Delta, as well as the Quest card for United. So those are still available. Amtrak has their Guest Rewards Preferred card. Now, this is through First National Bank of Omaha, not a bank we normally talk about, but if you're even considering Amtrak, either as a regular user on the East Coast, or if you are a person that is considering a excursion with it, this may be something to consider as far as the different benefits that the card does provide. So that is what we have for the welcome bonuses for this week. Now, as far as transfer bonuses, we do have a couple of things to talk about. We still have for Amex Avianca, as well as Marriott Bonvoy through November 30th. We do have the Accor Live Limitless and Vietnam Airlines kind of banding together as far as transfer bonuses. If you take your Accor Live Limitless through to Vietnam Airlines, you're going to get a 50% bonus on it. And so that would be going from 3 to 2 to a 1-to-1 ratio as far as Accor Live Limitless points to Vietnam. And then if you're going the other way, Vietnam to Accor Live Limitless, you're going to go from 5 to 1 to 5 to 1.5. So, and there, I'll make sure to obviously have the landing page for this in the description. There's also actually right now, a bit of an award alert for Vietnam Airlines flying from the United States to Vietnam. I'll include information about that just in case if that was something on your dance card to consider Vietnam, and this may be something that kind of fits it and helps with it. Capital One, we have British Airways, 20%. That's going to be ending this week on the 22nd. Chase, we've got Finnair all the way through December 31st. Virgin Atlantic is going to end shortly for that, so keep that one in mind. And now we have Marriott's 70% that will end November 30th. Now, that does sound good on the surface at 70%, especially for Marriott. We normally see 100% for Hilton, but Hilton points are not considered as valuable as Marriott. But definitely consider that even with a 1-to-1 that it normally is, and then throwing in this 75%, you do still fall short of what Chase points normally are worth. But as we always talk about, these are just baselines. You may need to top off, and this becomes an economical way of doing it, or you have a really outstanding redemption that this allows you to do it. Just make sure to always check the points in the value so that you're always making sure you're setting yourself up for the best deal. Now, as far as points and miles opportunities this week, just a couple to talk about. Southwest, this one ends tomorrow, and this is up to 50% discount when you're purchasing points. But if you do that at least the 3,000 point level, which is what it would be, you also get 20% off of their basic, and not Chase, it's their choice base fare when you're purchasing those points. And that 20% off promotion is going to be for flights from December 1st through April 30th of 2026. Now that 50% discount will bring that quote unquote baseline value to 1.5 cents per mile. on that. So if you're a person that does kind of get on Southwest a bit, it is something that, once again, I've talked about this before. I'm not the biggest fan of Southwest, but I do. It's the only airline that flies to my son's home airport from where I live as a nonstop. So it is actually something I'm going to try to calculate the numbers today to see if it's something that works for me on that. IHG, up to a 100% bonus, like we talked about as far as when we were talking about Marriott. This is kind of the ceiling of what IHG does, but they do this pretty often. So even though it may seem good on the surface, if the timing's not right for you, do not feel like you have to make a move on this. And this would be for 5,000, anything from 5,000 points and above will bring you down to kind of that baseline amount of 0.05 cents per point. Avianca is going to be ending on Tuesday on November 18th. This is up to 170% bonus. Not the best ever, but once again, Avianca does a very good job of bringing these, even at this kind of a level of bonus, up pretty often. So you will have other opportunities. Don't feel like you have to make a move now, but it is a good purchase price if you are considering it. And then as far as the quick notes, just a few things to touch on. Lufthansa is now a new Rove Miles partner. We've talked about Rove Miles as the loyalty program that is not within a credit card ecosystem. It sits alone. I did a video about this. I'll make sure to put a link for this in the description. It's definitely a mistake that I made because I had booked a hotel stay to go see my son and thought I was getting a decent number as a gold member with Marriott, and I could have saved money on the actual purchase price, let alone the points that I could have got through Rove Miles. So I don't want you all to end up missing that as I did. But as the new partner, this is a big addition because of especially if you're a person that's looking at a bucket list kind of trip that you want to be able to take with Lufthansa's first class. It's really hard to be able to get points to do through Lufthansa because they're really not a transfer partner with others. So this is a very good score for Rove, who has really only been in existence since earlier this year. So it opens up that possibility of first class for that. So once again, I'll have the link for the video in the description. See if it's something that it may be beneficial to you, especially now that they have the ability for you to go through them, but you're actually going to get the points that you would deal with the whole hotel loyalty program. So you don't lose that. You'll get the points from the credit card that you're using as well. And then you would get the Rove Miles part. So it's a bit of a triple dip that you would be able to do with it. The second one is something that I think we talked about last week, which was talking about Explorist status of Hyatt through Sapphire Reserve. So in mid-2026, the high spending Sapphire Reserve cardholders will earn Hyatt Explorer status. And we talked about that this was the most likely thing to happen. So if you spend $75,000 in a single year on your personal Sapphire Reserve or $120,000 on your business card, you would then get Explorer status through the end of 2027. Now, Explorist normally requires 30 nights or 50,000 base points. And the main things it gives you is 2 p.m. late checkout, if available, and room upgrades. So this is not something that people would be necessarily striving for on that Sapphire Reserve, same as you would have for the IHG Platinum status that also comes with the $75,000 spend. But if you're already going to be there, then it's a nice little touch to throw on there. And I think that's kind of part of the reasons that the Sapphire Reserve is having problems trying to compete with the Amex Platinum. It's obviously the Amex Platinum has its own thing with the high annual fee. And then for the lounge access, you have to spend a certain amount of money. But at least, quote unquote, at least the American Express Platinum is you trigger all of the credits and the benefits just by having the card, regardless of your spend. That level of spend that you have to do for the lounge to have other people come in is the only thing for that. By Chase having really not major things that come with the $75,000 status, to be part of it also hurts it, in my opinion. But I'm curious of your thoughts if you're considering the Sapphire Reserve or if you've been looking at it. Now, Marriott does have soft landing, and this is something that's kind of came up recently. What ends up happening is if you fail to earn the listed status that you are basically looking at, and you will drop to the following status. So, and make it more clear, this applies if you reached your existing status again. So if you were an ambassador elite, then if you don't match your ambassador elite for this year here in 2025, then you will only have to drop down to titanium elite, even if your spend was not even up to that level. And so that's what, but you do have to at least get to the status that you had to make sure that you would be able to qualify for that. So titanium elite, you would drop down to platinum, or platinum, you would drop down to gold. You're not going to have a massive drop. So that's something if you're not going to be able to meet the certain spend for status as we get here near the end of 2025, that would be something that you would have to look at and consider. And then sustainable aviation fuel is probably something that we've all come across as the for the environment. And this has been a big thing for airlines as far as trying to do something to offset their fuel use. And so we've seen a lot of airlines be where you could buy that value and help you to use it towards elite status. And so Alaska is doing that now for a period of time. You can earn up to 5,000 status points through these sustainable aviation fuel credits, or SAF credits. Now that max would be $1,000 because you can earn 500 status points for every $100 of the safe credits through purchase if it's through December 31st. So it's a lot of money to try to get you over the top, but if you know you're not going to be able to get there and you value that next status level up, then it may potentially be worth that $1,000 to you. So that is something that you may need to evaluate and make sure to check that out. So let's talk about some of the headlines that we've got for this week. One of the things that I want to make sure to point out as we look at this, we talked about Sonder last week at the beginning of the news, I'll call it. And that was where Marriott all of a sudden dissolved their partnership with Sonder. I talked about the fact that Sonder had a very bad history as far as their financials and essentially not providing good, clean books, and thought that that was really only one of the only things that could have happened to make them dissolve so fast. Well, shortly after our live stream, I think the following day, we found out that Sonder went bankrupt. And I even saw a news report, I think it was from Pittsburgh, where Sonder was kicking long-term people out of one of their hotels, and they had to be out in 24 hours. So I thought that was really interesting to see that happen. But Marriott knew they were really kind of getting into a bad deal with this, just didn't expect it to blow up as fast. And want to make sure to say hello to Matt. Appreciate it. Yep, hit the like. I really do appreciate that. It all helps. Talked about Matt numerous times as far as the tidbits, but he's also, if you end up looking at his channel, has definitely ended up doing more long form video to kind of give you more insight into the things that he's covering. So make sure to check it out if you haven't been by lately. A lot of great content that he's doing. Appreciate you stopping through, Matt. Now, let's talk about Hilton cutting base points earnings at two of their brands. We've got, we obviously talked about last week about the Hilton Diamond Reserve status, which was kind of leaked out and then confirmed on social media by Hilton. But one of the other things that was kind of embedded in that was the fact that Homewood Suites by Hilton and Spark had language in there that they were going to reduce their base points by 50% on those two. Now, if you're not familiar with those two brands, Homewood Suites is basically an extended stay brand, but a pretty decent extended stay brand for Homewood Suites. Spark is a budget brand that's under their premium economy category. So both of them are going to go from their standard 10x per dollar down to 5x per dollar. This will equal them with Home to Suites as well as True, which I'm a little surprised that they did it with Homewood Suites. Not surprised that they did it with Spark as a budget brand. I've had the opportunity to stay at Homewood Suites, and I thought it was a nice stay, very one that I thought was still getting good business. But of course, these things don't happen in a vacuum. So clearly, they are not getting the value out of it that they expected. So it's come down. So make sure as you're looking at your different options to keep that one in mind. And then new hotels. I always like to touch a little bit on new hotels as we are all gathering our points and miles for this hobby that many of us do. It's always interesting to be able to use our points maybe at new places that we may not have considered or heard about. And so I want to touch on 3 of them for you. The first one is an Intercontinental in Vietnam. Now, if you're not aware, a lot of the hotels, even for good high-level brands, anything from Intercontinental, or you could go up to any major brand you're looking at, normally has much lower prices than we're used to here in the Americas, let's say. So this one is for Ha Long Bay, Vietnam, and this is going to be along a stretch of beach and water over there that at least the images look really nice. 275 guest rooms, suites, and villas. And this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I actually had to remind myself of what this was too. It is a natural or cultural landmark of what they would consider outstanding universal value. Now, this Intercontinental is going to have 6 restaurants. Well, it does because they just opened 6 restaurants and spas, but it's starting at only $122 per night or 22,000 IHG points. And because it's really easy to accumulate IHG points, and you get the 4th night free if you have a platinum status, which you can easily get from their credit card, one of their credit cards on it. So it's a really nice way to be able to utilize their points. And a lot of times you end up getting welcome bonuses that could be 140,000 points and up. That alone is your trip. And that's one of the reasons why I really like in IHG points to be able to do some things like this. The second one is the Hyatt Place Cancun, which is interesting enough. This is at Cancun Airport, 156 guest rooms and suites. They do have 24-hour complimentary airport shuttle, free breakfast, a market, and a lobby bar. They're starting at $81 per night or between 6,500 and 9,500 Hyatt points. What's interesting with that on a negative side is that that's a category 2. Now, Hyatt Place does bounce around depending upon the location between category 1 and 2, but starting at $81, I would have definitely expected it to be a category 1, which would put you more into that 3,500 points to 5,500, I think, points. So not the best option for points if it's going to be starting at that low of a price. The third one is one from Accor Live Limitless, and this is Lucknow Park Hotel and Spa. Now, this is in their Emblems collection, and this is their flagship hotel for Accor Live Limitless. This is in the UK near Bath. This is, if you see the image for this, and it's on their website, it basically looks like a countryside, almost like a castle to a certain extent, but with a large footprint of multiple units there. It has 42 guest rooms and 9 cottages. It was initially built in 1720. Michelin star restaurant. It starts at $475 per night, or you can use your Accor Live Limitless points. And as we've talked about Accor Live Limitless, that is a fixed rate. So it's not always the best to get the best deal. 2,000 points is equivalent to roughly these days $46 in US dollars, and that becomes a credit on your bill to bring down the overall cost. But that would be a new hotels options that you could be able to look at as well. Let's touch on Clear, Concierge, Express, and Gate. Now, most of us know about Clear. Clear is essentially the service where you basically have secure identity partnership, identity membership program, and it's at 59 U.S. airports in large venues such as the where the New Jersey Nets play to where the Lakers play, would be a couple of examples, as well as some other sports venues as well. $209 annual fee. Main thing that's known about Clear is American Express is the key place that some of their credit cards will give you that as a credit, such as the American Express Platinum. Now, there are 31 million members with this right now, which is gigantic. And I think that's part of the reason why sometimes, even for me, and I know I've heard from others, is that going to the airport, there are some times where I will skip Clear, where the line is longer there than TSA pre-check, and I can actually get through quicker. Now, that's not often, but it does happen sometimes. And I think the other part that I've noticed is that there are also a number of times, especially when I went to see my son the last time, there were a lot of Clear Clear ambassadors, is what they're called. Clear ambassadors just kind of standing around. They didn't have any kind of business. So I think part of this is a bit of a cash grab, but also to try to keep the employees that they have and maybe not have to lay off some. So Clear Concierge Express is a $99 additional fee. And this is where a Clear ambassador will meet you curbside to speed you through security. Sounds fair enough, but $99 per time, that's not any type of membership. That is per time that this happens. Then they have Concierge Gate, which is an optional upgrade to Concierge Express at $179. That includes helping with checking in, the bags, helping you to maneuver around the airport, and guidance to get to the gate. This would be something I think for most people, maybe if you had a individual traveler or maybe elderly travelers where you don't have someone there to kind of do some of those things for them, that you might want to consider to kind of take it up a level from just having, especially like in a wheelchair and things like that, where you can already contact the airline to provide essentially porter service. This is a bit of more of an elevation for it. I will be surprised how many people will actually use this service, and I'll be curious of you all's opinion on that. I do have listed here the hotels, the airports that currently have this service. I won't run through the whole list, but they are varied. I guess I shouldn't have just put the prefixes on for those. So let me just say it real quick. Austin Airport in Texas, BWI for Baltimore, Denver, Detroit, Dulles in DC, Houston Airport. OCG is the Maui. I think it's Maui. San Juan, Minneapolis. MCO would be Orlando. DCA would be Reagan Airport in Washington. Salt Lake City. TUL, I want to say is Tulsa, but I might be missing that. And then William Hobby, which is also an airport in Houston. So those would be the locations of where you could be able to look for this. And then let's move to the whole thing with the Visa MasterCard $38 billion settlement, and what does it really mean? And probably many of you all have already heard about this, but let's just start from the beginning on this real quick. This is something that's been about 20 years in the making, and this has been legal battles between Visa and MasterCard and the merchants, the different stores that we all shop at. And this has all been wrapped into the aspect of having to pay and how much to pay for swipe fees. There's been some talk also as far as the concerns of the option of processors with credit cards. That didn't really play itself out into this settlement. And processing goes back to who processes in behind the scenes. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. Discover was one of the reasons of why Capital One ended up taking over with Discover, to be able to have that processing unit, which can essentially generate them more money and bring some of their costs down on their current cards. But that didn't involve in this settlement. The settlement kind of was two parts. The first part was reducing the interchange fees, which are the swipe fees, by about 0.1% each year over the next 5 years. Now, so you're talking about 0.5% over time. That doesn't move the needle a whole lot, but it's something that they wanted. It's the second part that we all really need to kind of pay attention to. The second part ends up involving, one, they now have broken these credit cards that we utilize into 3 separate classes. You've got one class, which is your basic consumer card. Then the second class is the premium rewards credit cards. And then third, the business credit cards. So when we talk about these cards, the basic credit cards are going to be those Chase Freedom Unlimited, the City Double Cash, cards that really don't necessarily provide us rewards to much of an extent and are just basic credit cards. And then we have the premium reward cards, which are the ones that most of us are aware of: the Venture X, the Sapphire Reserve, the City Strata Elite. So those are those ones. What merchants will now be able to do is they will now be able to choose which type of cards that they are going to accept. Now, one thing that we do have to keep in mind is the fact that while they will be able to do this, I don't think we're going to see many actually utilize it. And the reason for that is because of the fact that if you end up having a case where Target or Walmart decides that they won't take the Chase Sapphire Reserve, that one, it's complicated for them to kind of make sure that all of their cashiers deal with and to address it in the system. But it's also going to be something that obviously impacts their ability to be competitive because others will just end up doing it. They'll end up taking those cards. So I don't think we're going to see that. Now, you may see that in some low margin kind of businesses. Trying to think of one that would come to mind. You might see it maybe with medical billing. I think you could see it in, trying to think another low margin, restaurants potentially. Those are the ones that where if that industry does low margin between profits, they might do something like that. But I don't think we're going to see it as part of the mainstream situation. They're going to have other options for that we're going to talk about. And I see that Matt, and let me get to Matt and Sleepy Rod. Matt said, I have a bad feeling that merchants are going to go overboard if this goes into effect. I think there is some concern with it. I guess I'm thinking that I think it's the other part that we're going to talk about that I think they're going to go overboard on that will definitely affect many of us in a period of time. But I definitely think that there's some concern for that being a possibility. The other one, Sleepy Rod said, I think that the most likely scenario is that they'll charge you more if you use a Visa Infinite or a Visa Signature. And I think that is probably going to be the more likely that we're going to end up seeing on this. And that's this goes to the second part of this. What they're most likely going to end up doing is the real power is not rejecting cards. It's going to be in the surcharging. And that's because merchants can now add up to a 3% fee when you pay with these cards. Now, obviously, it's the question of where they're going to apply it. Not likely to apply it on your basic credit cards, of course, but it's the premium ones that they're going to be looking to potentially do that. And I do agree with Matt that I think we're going to see some overboard surcharges happening on credit cards. It'll be interesting how each of them dole it out, though. Do they end up picking what names do they pick? Do they specifically say a Chase Freedom Unlimited, a Chase Freedom Flex, a Capital One's Saver Rewards card, or I'm sorry, more likely a Quicksilver credit card? Is that where we kind of see that, a City Double Cash? So I think that is a very good possibility of them doing that. And it's an easier thing for them to apply on that. And I think that's something that we will end up seeing. So when we talk about this, that's what we're ending up saying as far as when you're talking about the premium Visa cards, we're talking about Visa Infinite and Visa Signature, like Sleepy Rod mentioned. These are cards like the Sapphire Reserve, the Capital One Venture X, and a lot of premium airline credit cards that they carry higher interchange fees because they fund the generous programs, of course. On the MasterCard, you got the World Elite and the World MasterCard that's going to be there, City Premier, as well as a lot of hotel co-branded cards and business cards for that. And I think that we've talked about one time, well, probably not more, just one time, we talked about how much these co-branded cards really make the airlines. American Airlines, and this is for the hotels as well, but an example would be American Airlines got about $5 billion annually from the miles that it deals with Citi. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue that's going to end up happening is if we end up starting to utilize these cards less because they hit us with the surcharges, and we can even talk about the Citi Globe, or you could talk about any of the premium credit cards that get you the lounge access and you're spending $500, $600 a year for it, then they're going to have to do something to kind of reduce things down. And that could end up being reduction of perks. It could be the an adjustment on, well, mainly on the perks, I think it could be the biggest thing. And so those are things that we all are going to end up having to pay attention to. Now, there are merchant organizations that are not happy about this settlement. They don't feel it went far enough. But has gone on for quite a while. And this is, I think, to me, this is the most that they've been able to get out of a potential settlement. The last one, I think, was $30 billion, but it didn't go as far as I remember, the classification of these credit cards to be able to easily kind of say, we're not going to deal with premium credit cards. They will obviously most likely set up what quantifies as premium credit cards and then just say, if it's a premium credit card, it's 3%, and just not even play around with it. Business cards, I think, are going to be somewhat at risk as well for this. So it's something that it's just going to be a bit of a slow rollout. Some people will jump on this real quick, but I don't think it's going to be everybody, and we're going to have time to adjust. I think the biggest things that we have to try to keep in mind on this is how do we prepare and deal with this? And I think many of the steps, or some of the steps, are ones that most of us already try to do. One is that we need to be diversified. We don't necessarily know how each credit card issuer is going to be impacted with this. And also keep in mind that American Express is not part of this. Now, what does that mean for them not to be a part of it? Maybe they don't necessarily get touched. I mean, we know they have obviously very high swipe fees, but they were not a part of this. So something to keep in mind for that. But even the diversification between your Citi thank you points or your Chase points or your Amex membership rewards or Capital One miles. Make sure that you're diversified. I think that's a practice that most of us try to do anyway, mainly because of how when we try to put together a good point redemption, we want to be able to pull from different places, even if we may be loyalists to certain programs. I think that would be something to look at. I see that Sleepy Rod said I'd probably get rid of all my Visa Infinite cards at that point. And I think that's something that we would have to end up looking at. I think that obviously if we, with the fees that would come with that Visa Infinite card for most of the cards that we're dealing with, that would be something that would have to be considered. But then I think it really comes down to how much of an impact of if the places that you go that you would normally use that card at, how much it impacts it. For instance, if you were a person that had a Visa Infinite and let's say it was a Sapphire Reserve, depending upon where you normally make your points at, and if those local establishments, or if you're a traveler, your travel establishments that you go to, I think it's going to be each individual is going to end up having a look at how it impacts it. Like the dining aspect, that's a low margin one. Gas is a low margin one that could kind of jump in with those classifications versus the surcharges. But it is definitely going to be an individual thing we're all going to have to look at and evaluate over time. And then I see Matt says this will lead to the Freedom Unlimited going on the Amex payment network. That's an interesting thought in regards to it. I think that obviously a card like that, and hopefully Freedom Flex might be considered more of a basic card, even though we do get a little bit more mileage out of it than a 1.5% card. So hopefully that, or the return of the Wells Propel cards. That's an interesting aspect as well. I think that this is all things that we're going to have time to, I don't think we're going to get hit with a wave where we end up having to make a decision to necessarily drop cards immediately. I think we're going to have some time to factor it out, and we're going to be able to figure out our own local merchants of which ones does it change how you shop. If a Walmart does something versus your local Kroger, let's say, in my case, or does it make you change your shopping differently because of them doing that, or does it make you change you utilizing or being able to maximize one of the credit cards you have? It'll be different for all of us, but that will be an issue. You do need to consider having diversification because we don't know what's going to end up happening. And I think that, but we're going to have time. We're not going to be in a position where we're going to have to panic about any of this at all. We're going to be able to get data points from the major brands, the major merchants, the Lowe's, the Home Depots, the Walmarts, the Targets. We're going to be able to see, one, do they make it nationwide of certain programs they do? Do they decide to start regional because they see that in their numbers, not as many people use those cards, or people are really utilizing those cards? And each of them will make their decision, and then we will basically be reactive in a lot of cases and see what that ends up happening with them. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to you all's attention. I know that's been a bit of a topic. I see Timothy jumped in. I think those in this hobby will adjust well. I think this change captures the bulk of people who are not aware of the mechanics of the system. I think that's exactly right, Timothy. I think that this is not the first regulation kind of issue that's impacted points and miles, and it still does move along. It does still survive. It may be in a different form. It may require us to invest more time into how we do things. But I think for us hobbyists, I think we will always kind of find a way to still make something maximize, even if it may take us a little bit more sweat equity. The ones that get kind of swept into this are maybe the ones that, like Timothy talked about, maybe the ones that just sometimes use their credit card, sometimes they don't. And now they may just say, nah, the heck with it, I won't even use a credit card. And I think that can impact those people, and maybe that are not necessarily the people that do this hobby like we are. So hopefully there's more information that gets out to everybody so that everybody can work this situation appropriately for their situation. It's the ones that are not necessarily part of the hobby, that might be on the borderline or may not understand it as well, that I worry about being able to maneuver and keep up with things. So that is definitely a possibility that will end up happening. So, but that's what I wanted to kind of touch on today on this, hopefully for you all, a beautiful Sunday morning, or depending upon where you're at, maybe a different day or a different time of the day. Just want to make sure if there's anything else that is crossing you all's mind about what's going on these days that we should touch on. But because those are the main thing I wanted to walk us through and discuss for today. But if there's not anything, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to drop in for this. I hope it's been helpful. Always make sure to give me your thoughts obviously in the live chat. I appreciate. And if you're watching this afterwards in the recorded version, make sure to put notes in the comments, and we can definitely continue talking about it. And if you like the content, consider liking and subscribing. It always helps the channel. Want to thank you all so much for you all's time today, and I'll make sure to talk with you all soon. You all take care.